Well, joining me now is Maajid Nawaz, who spent 4 years in an Egyptian jail for being a member of the Islamist party Hizb ut-Tahrir. He's since renounced the party's ideology and has set up the Quilliam think tank, which is dedicated to human rights and democracy. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Now, we've seen that the reshuffle, essentially, and a new vice president appointed. Is that going to be in any way enough to satisfy the protesters?
I've just got off the phone with Ahmed Salah, who's head of the Shabab Sittat Ibril, or the 6th of April revolutionary movement. They are Democrats, they are centrist, and they were the ones galvanizing youth for this democratic uprising. And he's assured me that the Egyptian people will absolutely refuse the window dressing that Mubarak has just announced. Time and again, Mubarak thinks that by shifting the cabinet and by dismissing the prime minister and by keeping himself on essentially what's a throne, that he can pacify the people. Well, the people of Egypt are now saying that enough is enough, and they're not going to accept that.
But also, what happens next? I mean, if Mubarak leaves, and that's still a big if, isn't it? What replaces him? And at the moment, there doesn't seem to be really a coherent opposition that could take over, or that could...
There are a number of opposition groups. There's no one coherent opposition, but you did mention some of the figureheads. Now, I spent time in prison with Ayman Noor. He was my cellmate. And I think that he has, by far, the most strength on the ground in terms of an opposition movement.
And how is he? Because we heard yesterday he'd been injured.
He's still in hospital, and we're not able to get hold of him. I've been trying to get hold of him, but I think they've cordoned off his room, and they're not allowing people to access him. But I would say very strongly that there's a man who can lead the people. He's been elected in fixed elections and still took second place, which is why he was imprisoned after that in 2005.
Now, at the moment, we've got the situation which could escalate into something, a dangerous territory, where there's reports of looting and kind of more violence, more people dying. There's a danger always with this, is that people who have been out protesting and who've kind of taken the risk and of being arrested and so on, and have broken through that fear barrier, as people have described it, will now get actually quite frightened by the dangerous situation on the ground and stop protesting. Is that right?
As I said, I've just spoken to the people on the ground, and they're assuring me they will continue to protest. And what they've said is what your report reflects as well, which is that militia have arisen to protect the residents because there are baldaghiya, or thugs, on the streets. They are saying that these thugs are the police. People connected to the regime that I've spoken to are saying that these thugs are the Muslim Brotherhood. But I think the important thing is, without placing blame, that there are thugs on the streets, and it's not coming from the democratic revolutionaries who are trying to protect the residents. I think Omar Suleiman, as a choice of vice president, gives us an opportunity here for Omar Suleiman to actually manage the transition to a democratic regime. And this opportunity should be seized before it's hijacked.
Just on that point, I mean, is there a mechanism for actually removing the president? And does that mechanism only kind of come in once you've got a vice president?
I think the important thing is that even Mubarak came into power after Sadat was assassinated because he was vice president. And the reason Mubarak didn't keep a vice president for his entire 30-year tenure is because of the danger of the vice president actually taking over. But realistically, if you're going to talk about from Mubarak's perspective, what he would need to do is resign. Of course, Omar Suleiman, being the former head of the military intelligence, is able to, in effect, muscle him out. And I think it'll be a combination of both. I do think that by appointing Omar Suleiman as VP, Mubarak is paving the way for his own resignation. But what I hope is that Omar Suleiman, and he's known to be a responsible man, I hope that he uses his position now to orchestrate a safe transition to democracy and not allow Egypt to go down the line of military dictatorship.
Because I suppose that's the danger, isn't it, is you got out of the frying pan into the fire. I mean, that you could end up with something that's possibly worse. Well,
I've spoken to Omar Suleiman, a close friend of his, and he assures me that Omar Suleiman's intentions are to help the transition to a democratic regime. And if that's true, then I urge Omar Suleiman on air, and he's known to be a responsible man, to orchestrate this transition to a democracy and allow people like Ayman Noor and Mohammed al-Baradei to stand in free and fair elections, and they will be elected if they stand.
Just on the point of what you could end up with next, I mean, obviously the role the US and some Western powers have been worried about is the role of the Muslim Brotherhood that also Egypt, or the Egyptian leadership, has kind of raised as a spectre sometimes. And so, you know, what is the Muslim Brotherhood up to at the moment? I mean, are they playing it cool at the moment because they want to stay out of the limelight because they have other plans, or are they simply just behind the curve with this protest?
I think they've kept out of the limelight on purpose because they know that the old guard present a binary to the world, that it's either us, tyranny and dictatorship, or Islamist extremists. And the Muslim Brotherhood have played it very clever here by stepping away from this to say, look, these are secular democratic young people rising up in Egypt. And that's the truth. And I think my advice to Mohammed al-Badia, who's, again, my former cellmate, the current global leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, I spent time with him in prison as well. My advice to him, if he's listening, is keep keep in the background, do not step forward, because this is not your revolution. This is the revolution of 60% of the young people in the area of the Middle East at the moment who are under the age of 21. This is their time. This is the new generation's time, and let them have their time. And when there are free and fair elections, then run for elections, have your people in parliament, but the leader for the country must be a unifying figure, and that won't be the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay, Maajid Nawaz, thank you very much indeed for your insight, and obviously you know these people very well, so we appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
A pleasure.